Good morning, everyone. Sheila Gunn Reid makes me laugh sometimes. She says, these weird Alberta government COVID ads are having the opposite of the desired effect on me. For example, this one makes me want to hang out with the COVID monster because he seems fun. I want to invite him camping, to be honest. Here's the ad. And yeah, he looks like a blast, that COVID monster. COVID's a major party animal. Name the time and place, and he's always down. Nobody loves an excuse to party more than COVID. Man, got to get that guy to the campground. He'll be a blast. Canada needs a federal reopening plan, says the Toronto Sun. I think that's probably, isn't that what was required the second things got closed? Isn't that why there's there's a sunset clause on the emergency powers? That's why they keep having to re-up them every 30 days. And they do, without debate, no problem. That's provincially, not federally. But yeah, we really do need a plan. And Michelle Rempel's getting on board with this idea that we need a plan too, and I'll have a look at that. Here we have the CPC health critic, Michelle Rempel, calling for vaccine passports to be able to have any of your freedom back. I swear the libs and cons are literally reading from the same playbook. See, the thing is, they're trying to find what's palatable, right? They're trying to take away the freedoms to the point where you're demanding the vaccine passport so you can return to normal. The problem is we don't need a vaccine passport to return to normal. But none of our politicians are arguing for that. I'm interested to see if we'll have a big slate of independent candidates. I don't think so, because Dominion. Really, Dominion. But I don't think so, that's why. But I think that people are pretty well fed up with the Liberals and the Conservatives and all of the ability for the trolls on Twitter to blanket target somebody. Like, oh, you support PPC, you're X, or you support CPC, you're Y, or you support the Liberals, you're Z. It doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter which group you support. There's a group of trolls who are going to target you for that. And so I think that maybe we're at the beginning of an era where political party affiliation is secondary to what you say and what you do on your social media channels and your platforms. I think that maybe that's potentially where we're going. Not yet. We've got major problems to deal with, and we may not deal with the major problems, like the budgetary problem we were dealing with in 2020 before all this happened. That's not going to get dealt with now. We're in a whole new state of being, new problems to deal with, right? All those old problems still there, but we have new problems to deal with. So maybe we get to that point. Maybe we get to an enlightened place where we can have people who are actually interested in improving the country govern us, instead of having people who are party acolytes or party faithful, having the plum positions because, they know Trudeau or whatever. They know somebody who Trudeau owes a favor to or whatever. But anyway, back to this. I don't know where we're going politically. I can hope, but for now, the party system is what most people are comfortable with, and they're quite fine with getting on social media and joining their team and screaming about how terrible you are because you're not on their team. Anyway, back to this. The Liberal government needs a data-driven plan on lifting restrictions. The plan that she wants is basically vaccine passports, which is what was said in the tweet, but it's a little muddy. It's one of those things where she's making the implication that you could come to the conclusion that she's on your side. But ultimately, this can be read like a pathway to vaccine passports, because it doesn't say, this paragraph. A year into the pandemic, we have tools like rapid tests, therapeutics, vaccines, and data on how COVID-19 is transmitted. We haven't been using therapeutics, Michelle, but anyway. Lockdown measures were put in place to buy time to get these tools. Now that these are available worldwide, the federal government needs to tell Canadians how they're going to be deployed, under what timelines, and most importantly, how they're going to be used to lift widespread restrictions permanently. So we need the tools that have been developed, and the tools are rapid tests, therapeutics, vaccines, and data on COVID-19 to open fully. And how they're going to be used to lift widespread restrictions permanently. So how are these tools? We are going to make you have this test to lift things, or we're going to make you have this vaccine to lift the restrictions. This is not appropriate, but this is how it's framed. Okay, back to this. It's baffling that this hasn't happened yet, says Michelle. Other countries have already started to pin permanent reopening targets to things like vaccination status. For example, Iceland just announced that those fully vaccinated could enter their country without quarantine. If Iceland can do this, then surely the Canadian government can, at the very least, give an indication of the work they're doing to arrive at the same conclusion. To date, the only statement the Canadian feds have made on the issue is that people who are fully vaccinated are still subject to controversial quarantine hotel measures. Yay! expensive and unnecessary, and no data to back up that it's effective at stopping the spread of respiratory virus. Anyway, back to the article. Calls for reopening guidelines are being made by industry and civil society groups across the country. This is why Conservatives have introduced a motion in the House of Commons that will force the Liberal government to provide Canadians within 20 days a clear, data-driven plan to support safely, gradually, and permanently lifting COVID-19 restrictions. Members of Parliament will vote on this motion on Wednesday. I'll keep you updated on that. I feel like, again, be careful of your champions, because they will reverse it on you. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, in order to access these services like mail, you have to get this jab. And if you don't get the jab, then you're a white supremacist terrorist. Oh yeah, no, vote Conservative. Yes, that was the communist fist. Okay, back to this. Back to this. What does Canada's Chief Science Advisor, Dr. Mona Niemer, make of the extension of 4 months between first and second COVID-19 doses? The very people who want to protect the most require that we give them the second dose using the shorter interval, she tells Evan Solomon. Now, this is at the end of the clip. This is almost 2 minutes, but I think that it's really worthwhile, and I think the volume is okay. Like sometimes there's a Twitter video that I can hear that's kind of quiet, but this one sounds loud to me, so I'm hoping that it's at least as loud as my volume is. I think this is worthwhile. I'm going to stop it if it stops being worthwhile, but I'm going to play most of it. Here we go.
Let me just start with the extension of the doses out to 4 months between the first and second dose in this new protocol. Clearly, it was based on a scarcity of vaccines available, and the idea is to give partial immunity to people. Is there data to back this up, or do you stick to your original assumption that this is, or characterization, that this is a population-level experiment?
Well, I'm not aware of data for showing that there is efficacy beyond actually 2 months of the first dose. And in the past few weeks, we've seen different studies come out showing that the response to the vaccine, to the first dose of the vaccine, in people who are in the elderly, in people who are immunocompromised, is actually not that good. And it wanes quite rapidly. So as a result, the very people that we want to protect the most require that we give them the second dose using the shorter interval, originally as done by the manufacturer in the clinical trials. So I think that the one-size-fits-all approach needs to be really modulated in terms of who we need to be protecting. Right now, the vast majority of the deaths of hospitalizations are happening in people who are 60 years and more. So age is definitely a factor. And I think that we need to be, careful in terms of the proportionality of the disease. Now, thankfully, we're no longer facing vaccine supply issues, and hopefully we will not moving forward. So hopefully that everyone will be able to get vaccinated.
So the idea is they're going to try and get everyone vaccinated with their first dose by July, and then follow up with the second dose 4 months later. But she said there's no data on the efficacy of that. We don't know how well that works. Odd, right? Here's Reuters. This is yesterday reporting, March 23rd. No, it's today reporting. Midnight, just after midnight. U.S. health body questions AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine data trial. AstraZeneca may have released outdated information on its latest COVID-19 vaccine trial, giving an incomplete picture of its efficacy, a leading U.S. health agency said on Tuesday, casting doubt on the shot's potential U.S. rollout and plunging its developers once again into controversy. The surprise public rebuke from federal health officials comes just one day after interim data from the drug maker showed better than expected results from the U.S. trial. That had been seen as a scientific counter to concerns that have dogged the shot over its effectiveness and possible side effects. The vaccine developed with Oxford University was 79% effective in preventing symptomatic illnesses in a large trial that also took place in Chile and Peru. According to the data, it was also 100% effective against severe or critical forms of the disease and hospitalizations, and posed no increased risk of blood clots. Check. How do they know that it's 100% effective against severe or critical forms? How are severe and critical defined? How do they know that it posed no increased risk of blood clots, considering that they said, like last week, there was more instances of blood clots? No, that was a mistake. Now that we've looked at it again and we've reclassified those blood clots to something else, there's no blood clot problem because those aren't blood clots anymore. Science, right? Okay, I don't know what the hand movement there was. Okay, the Data Safety Monitoring Board, DSMB, an independent committee overseeing the trial, has expressed concern that AstraZeneca may have included outdated information from that trial, which may have provided an incomplete view of the efficacy data. The U.S. National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, said in a statement released after midnight in the United States. So link to the statement there. AstraZeneca did not immediately respond to Reuters' request for a comment. Its shares were down 1.2% in mid-morning trading. Who knows what's true? How could you possibly discern it? How could you know? Right? If you walked into a Krispy Kreme and they handed you a donut and said, just walk this way, sir, and the donut's free, just let us inject this into your arm. Would you take it? CBS News is reporting Krispy Kreme will give you a free donut every day this year if you've been vaccinated. Man, why are they pushing this so much? Free pizza, free donuts. Did you see the pizza thing, the pizza promise the other day? There was New York City pizzerias saying vaccinated people get free pizza for some reason. It seems coercive, right? It seems coercive. I don't get free pizza just because I don't want to have the vaccine. All right, fine, man. Keep your free pizza. I don't want Krispy Kreme anyway. It goes right to my thighs. Okay, Ontario. This is moving into health. Ontario's Chief Medical Health Officer, Dr. Williams, made over $444,000, while his deputy, Dr. Barbara Yaffe, made over $296,000. Yet they are caught on a hot mic saying they don't know why they bring papers, as they just repeat what they're told to say. Do you remember that? Here, I'll give you a little reminder. Here's yesterday. Doug Ford was told, or was telling reporters, was being straight up with reporters. Oh, maybe a few days ago it was. Oh, March 16th. Okay. He says there's no politician in the country that's going to disagree with their chief medical officer. They might as well throw a rope around their neck and jump off a bridge. So he's saying, I'm not in charge here, man. The chief medical officer is in charge. Dr. Yaffe says, I don't know why I bring all these papers. I never look at them. I just say whatever they write down for me to say. Here's Dr. Yaffe saying exactly that. Here, it's 14 seconds. Let's listen to all of it. Okay? Here.
I don't know why I bring all these papers. I never look at them.
Oh, you're giving numbers. I do. I go, oh. I said that. Did you really say that?
I just say whatever they write down for me.
That's why you're guessing.
Exact same. Exactly the same. Yeah. I get all that money. I'm running the province, and whatever they put in front of me, I'll just say, just like that Anchorman clip, right? Where he just starts talking and talking and talking. Let's just do a quick history of what's been wrong that's been accepted by our experts. Okay. Our press corp. This is Don Walt, and I don't know if he's American. Bourbon Politics, Good History Books. He might be American. I don't know if he's American or Canadian, but he gets a whole bunch of this right. That our chief medical officer, this is almost $1 million in public money right here, right? This is Dr. Yaffe and Dr. Williams. Oh, wrong one. Here, right? 444,000 plus 296,000, almost $1 million in public money. Oh, I don't actually read anything or do anything. I just write down, or I just say what they tell me to say. Okay, our press corps is full of dogs that didn't bark. Here's the short list of major COVID stories largely ignored or underplayed by the media and most experts, including our highly paid Premier, Dr. Williams, and his deputy, Dr. Yaffe. Right? 1, hospitals weren't overwhelmed. Occupancy was below average in many places. Number 2, COVID deaths were significantly overcounted. 3, mortality risk was greatly exaggerated and rarely age stratified. Age stratified means broken down into the ages where people died. So 80 plus, 70 to 79, 60 to 69, right? Fauci, maybe American Fauci, an aging bureaucrat trying to protect his domain, is not a scientist. Positives were grossly inflated by absurdly sensitive test protocols. I think American maybe because of Fauci's mention. Lockdowns kill and have other massive negative consequences never weighed by their advocates. The WHO, CDC, and other health authorities had long held that quarantining the healthy and masking the public are not only ineffective, but damaging. Here is 45 seconds of public health, and I think this is Bonnie Crombie. No, not Bonnie Crombie. Bonnie Crombie is the mayor of Mississauga. Bonnie Henry in BC. I think that's who this is, but I could be wrong. Here we go. 45 seconds of Hers telling us masking doesn't work. And then she says, I've never told people not to wear masks. Here we go.
That it actually can be irritating and people are more likely to touch their face when they have a mask on. And that can be a way of inoculating yourself. If I'm not sick, it's not effective. It's not something that when I'm out in public, it's going to protect me in any way. So we don't want people wearing it all day long, for example. We cannot rely on a mask because the mask is not what keeps us safe. And masks for long periods of time are not recommended by anybody in any situation.
We're not wearing masks now. Would we be safer right now if we had masks on?
No, you see, these are the things that we have learned. I've always supported wearing masks. I've never said don't wear them. I've always said wear them where it's appropriate.
Wear them where appropriate, wear them. This is the best and brightest minds. I just say what they put down for me to say. I do the exact same, right? Oh my goodness me. Okay, so masking and masking the public are not only ineffective but damaging. We know this, and we're not doing anything about it. Doesn't matter. I'll show you what else we know, and very, very shortly we've got a professional scientist in Guelph writing the Wellington Dufferin Guelph public health. So welcome to the fight, sir. We'll talk about that soon. I've got a whole article about that, right? Number 7, lockdowns kill and have other massive negative consequences never weighed by their advocates. I said that already. Number 9, the COVID EPI curve follows a predictable pattern of seasonal peaks and valleys described by R.E. Hope Simpson 40 years ago. 10, humans have immune systems, and COVID resistance or immunity from memory T cells and B cells can be conferred from prior exposure to other viruses. 11, except on a few videos from Wuhan, China, no one collapsed in the streets from COVID-19, yet these images panicked public health officials and shaped policy the world over. 12, false positives through contamination and operational error are likely 1 to 2% of total tests. 13, spread from surface contamination is unlikely, yet officials keep acting like it is likely. 14, many studies have shown that several promising treatments for COVID patients significantly reduce mortality. 15, Sweden, Florida, South Dakota, not San Diego, India, and Pakistan had limited or no NPIs, non-pharmaceutical interventions like distancing and masks, but showed similar or better outcomes than places with strict measures. 16, kids very rarely die or get very sick from COVID-19, COVID-2, and are very weak spreaders, and school closures have terrible unintended consequences. I'm sure I missed something. What other facts did the press and experts and officials ignore, underplay, or actively try to suppress during the pandemic? Actively trying to suppress about masking, right? No, I never said not to wear masks except for all of last year when I said not to wear masks. Wild, shocking. Psychologically abusive. TTC is showing zero respect for children's mental health. It's up to children who have to keep everyone safe now. We demand this is taken down immediately. And this is a TTC ad. It says, my mask keeps my parents safe. They're using children as pawns to manipulate you. Don't believe me? Here's a child as a pawn manipulating you. Case in point. Wild. Okay, I just want to underline how inappropriate this is. BBC is reporting masks and social distancing could last years. Years. Once it's years, it's cultural. Once it's years, it's forever. Okay? So don't comply with this. Ontario has again extended all emergency orders under the Reopening Ontario Act for at least another month. They have to keep extending this in order for this to be valid. It is not valid. What is the emergency? How do we attack what the emergency is? They keep pushing this out. They keep saying we're in an emergency. We are not in an emergency. Where's the emergency? Here, the emergency is here, okay? The CIA uses social isolation to break down enemies to state. Social distancing is a euphemism for social isolation. It was a technique that was developed about 70 years ago by the CIA, and they found it was really good at breaking down enemies of state. It creates depression, poor sleep quality, impaired executive function, accelerated cognitive decline, poor cardiovascular function, and impaired immunity. It doubles the risk if you are black. It almost doubles your risk of death if you're white, and the harm that you get from enacting social distancing and social isolation on somebody is the same as if they were very, very obese. Moreover, it destroys the part of the brain that is actually responsible for learning in our children and ourselves, which is known as the ventral stratum. Sorry if I've got that wrong. I've probably got that wrong. Medically speaking, what studies have shown is that it's the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. I'm not sure that could be possibly true. This is anecdotal. I've heard of this before. Anecdotal means one person's story. I know that the CIA developed social distancing, and I know that it was used in Guantanamo. I want to underline this: that social distancing Doesn't, if it were a study to study whether it helped medically, the study would be stopped because it would not be ethical. You would not be able to continue because what you're doing to the person is not ethical, okay? Like if you're studying somebody and you give them 800 calories a day, that's not ethical. You can't do that, okay? Same thing. Yet this study, the study that's happening to us, is not being stopped. The experts are just doing what they're told, literally. We just do what we're told. We say what they tell us to say. We say what's written down. Here's another one, heads up from the great Kevin McNiernan. Ontario moving on from UK variant Scarefest with its own slogan, younger and sicker, to Brazilian version with yet a new PCR cycle threshold, but no slogan yet. So the Public Health Ontario's updated PCR cycle thresholds. Again, changes. This isn't meant to end. This isn't meant to end. And if you don't point out the problems with this, it will continue. Here is, this is collateral damage. These are all people who are stakeholders in different agencies addressing different aspects of this. I've said before that you can't fight everything. You can't do everything. You have time for maybe one thing. If you're lucky, one thing, okay? And maybe two, but you won't do both well. One thing is probably better to focus on. And anyway, so all of these people are working together, and they've come together to speak about what's going on in our schools and in our to our children. And I think this is poignant to listen to. So I'm just going to play a little bit of this, and it ties into the next story very well. So here we go.
So I did receive some of those questions, and I'm going to delegate that.
Sorry, a little fast. Hold on, I'll slow it down. Get it to everyone else's speed.
According to your expertise. And so, Nancy, I have one for you. Wondering if you could respond to this one. So what was sent to me is this. I'd like to know when these cohorts get shut down and sent home from school because of a positive case, is anyone feeling unwell enough to want to or need to stay home from school? Are we sending dozens of students when no one actually feels sick? So do you know how to, can you respond to that one, Nancy?
I will do my best.
Thank you.
I have some notes here just so I don't forget anything. So as I had mentioned, I'm teaching online, but I have seen emails and it talks about outbreaks and it doesn't state whether the person was symptomatic or not. This is the very first question that I ask myself as well. We all know the validity of the PCR test. So my biggest concern right now is that the boards are encouraging asymptomatic testing of students and teachers, which will only drive the case numbers up. And people really need to be aware of that. So I emailed and I asked why this was happening. I emailed the TDSB and the health department. I did get a reply back from the health department, and they said this was a Ministry of Education initiative. So it could be, or it could be a case where they're blaming each other. This has never happened in any other cold or flu season, when you think about it. I've worked for 14 years in education, 14 cold and flu seasons. Periodically, students are off, teachers are off. We don't feel well. Sometimes we come in with a tickle in our throat. Sometimes we have the sniffle. If we're really feeling awful, we'll take a few days off and we come back when we are ready. Nobody needs to test us to tell us when we're sick or when we can come back. And it was nobody's fault if we got sick.
Right. So there's a couple of things there. One, they've removed your ability to determine whether or not you're healthy or not. They have to test you to find out if you're healthy or not. And if you're not healthy, they'll send you home. And they'll send home everybody, the whole cohort. And they'll backhandedly blame somebody. Somebody here saw somebody who was sick and brought it here, right? This is insidious. They've made getting sick criminal. And the question was, are they sending home healthy kids? And I think this is very funny because I appreciate what she's doing, but she's definitely a teacher. Like, you asked me a question and I've got my notes, the things that I want to say. So I'll answer your question in 45 minutes when we've forgotten it and go through the notes. So the question was, are they sending healthy kids home sick? Yes. To answer the question. Yes, they are. Yes, emphatically yes. And I can show you, here's the Wellington, Dufferin, Guelph Public Health letter that talks about sending kids home. Your kid has been Your child is required to self-isolate and monitor for any COVID-19 symptoms until the end of day on March 29th, 2021. March 29th, 2021. This letter was sent, I can't show you the top of it, but it was sent midweek last week. I just want to make sure privacy is maintained for people. So interesting to me that this person has a healthy child who is now being directed by public health because they were potentially exposed. And it turned out they weren't exposed, but they still had 8 days of online school anyway. But it seems like if you're a student and you get somebody else in your school, in your classroom tests positive, your whole class gets sent home for 2 weeks to online school. This is normalizing online school. They haven't made any kind of studies available to look at with regards to online school versus in-class school for K to 6. Again, this is a situation where you would never do this. You wouldn't do this to kids because it would not be ethical to run that study. Okay? It would be stopped. In this situation, they're saying we have to. And you have to keep your kid in isolation. Now they go down. They go through down here. In some situations, it may not be practical for your child to isolate from the rest of the family. Your child may be too young, frightened, require additional care, or it may not be possible due to the layout or space in your home. Here are some tips to consider. Designate one person to be the primary caregiver for your child. This caregiver would then be required to self-isolate for the duration of the same 14-day isolation period as the child and cannot leave for essential reasons. So all of this is to say, you're also in prison with your son or daughter, with your child who's ill, and they can't access the help of a partner. They can't access the support of a family, the rest of their siblings and their their dad or mom or the other partner for the child and for the person self-isolating. Right? It seems like this has not been thought out from all angles with regards to public health. It seems like this is abusive. When I was sick, I got measles when I was a kid. Measles isn't so great, and it's more. Measles is very, very contagious, very contagious. And I had my whole family come in and take care of me and help me. And I mean, I was delirious half the time, but I remember lots of people coming through, right, to wish me well and wish me good luck and all sorts of stuff. And like, I don't know, I was like 8 or 9, so it's kind of a muddy memory now. But I remember family and being supported. And that's important when you're sick and when you're that sick. Like I really was delirious. Measles is no joke. And being confused and well and being told you're sick is abusive. It's not okay for public health to do. Moving into what I was going to talk about originally, or I teased earlier, the viral immunologist who's a scientist at the University of Guelph. He speaks out against abusive child quarantine policies. I have a response from the public health that says they're not abusive. And I think that's super funny. I mean, it's not funny because they are abusive, and I called them out on it at the beginning of the month. And I mean, I'm glad other people are calling them out on it too. But I think that it's interesting that when I get a response from the public health, they say, no, we're not abusive. And we made sure we're not abusive. And I'll highlight it. Hold on. This is the March 16th letter. Finally, to avoid misunderstanding, Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health has not issued an order requiring that children be isolated from members of their household in cases where a classmate has tested positive. Really? Here's the letter. Here's the letter. So, yes, you have. Although no order has been issued, we do recommend that children who have tested positive or are experiencing symptoms consistent with COVID-19 should be isolated from other members of the household, but only to the extent that it's possible to do so without compromising their care. Again, weak. Okay, here's the doctor from, or the University of Guelph person. A Canadian immunologist who conducts research into COVID-19 says that Ontario's child quarantine policies aren't based on science, and that his family is not going to be fully following them. Brian Bridle, sorry if I got that wrong, an associated professor of viral immunology at the University of Guelph, fired off an open letter over the weekend to public health officials, politicians, and media after being instructed to isolate his son alone for 2 weeks because a student in his class tested positive for the virus. I am a viral immunologist who conducts COVID-19 research, so I'm speaking from an incredibly well-informed position, the letter states. I am also a parent. From both perspectives, these policies for children who have had a classmate test positive for COVID-19 are nothing short of abusive. Bridle attached a copy of the letter his household received from Wellington Dufferin Public Health, which instructs instructed them to have their child isolated in a separate room for 14 days and to keep a distance of 2 meters from other family members. Although Bridle said they also received a voicemail from Public Health that clearly verbalizes that our children were to be isolated in a room. The Toronto Sun previously reported on similar policies in Peel and Toronto, but both of those jurisdictions have since revised their policies. Peel even apologized for it. Quote, I would challenge anybody if they want to try and force this on us to explain via the Canadian Charter of Rights how a public health official has the right to put their children into solitary confinement in their own home, Bridle told The Sun in an interview. As a parent and as a professional, I cannot do that. Welcome to the fight, sir. This is where I was in January. Okay, anyway, regardless. The researcher and professor noted that these policies are designed for children who aren't even determined to be sick, but are just for those who have been close contacts of classmates who tested positive. We are using kids, it seems, as shields as attempts to protect adults, Bridle added. Bridle wants Ontario parents to know that the science does not support these excessive policies. As a scientist, I follow the facts, said Bridle. The evidence is overwhelming. There's no question now that COVID-19 is no worse than the annual flu for our elementary school children. So far, the immunologist has not received a response from any of the local authorities he emailed, including his MP Conservative Michael Chong, his MPP Ontario Green Party leader Mike Schreiner. Don't expect one. Sorry. I get boilerplate responses at best, if I get a response at all. And sometimes when I threaten to take it to the bureaucracy through the ministries that they're part of, like if I don't know which one Chong is, but I look up which committees they're seated on, and then I'll bring it up through that. Like if it's applicable. If it's not applicable, then don't do that. But if it's applicable, if they're seated on something that has to do with, or loosely has to do with it, bring it through the bureaucracy, and then they have to deal with it. Just an idea. As a scientist, I feel it's important to relay facts to make the most informed decisions, Bridle told The Sun, because what I do is find that left to the public health officials and government alone, the facts coming out from those sources aren't 100% balanced. I feel that they are consistently imbalanced. Bridle is also concerned in professional capacity about the time children will have spent away from other people and kept at home the past year will affect their immune systems and potentially lead to severe allergies, asthma, and even autoimmune illnesses later in life. We're hurting our kids and trying to tell everyone that we're not hurting our kids. And I mean, they're trying to tell me we don't issue letters. We don't issue letters that do that, requiring children be isolated from members of their household in cases where a classmate has tested positive. And yet here's that letter. Weird, right? It's almost like they knowingly lied. Almost, right? Roman Baber says, kids are bursting with unspent energy. Shutting down kids' sports is bad for health and mental health. Dr. Watson, truly documented transmission between athletes. I'm not aware of anything. No, I'm not aware of anything. But it's okay because they just say what they're told to say. I just say what they write down for me, right? No problem. No problem. Here is Global News reporting. They're imprisoned. Advocates call on Ontario to ease COVID-19 restrictions in long-term care homes. This seems to be like a trend. You have to wonder why we're doing this to people. The daughter of a 93-year-old Ontario long-term care resident said in a video posted to Twitter that she wishes she could take her mother for an ice cream. It's 17 degrees Celsius. It's Monday in Sutton, Ontario. Right outside the long-term care home, there's a lovely little bench. I would love to get some ice cream and sit there with my mom and have a meaningful visit, Maureen McDermott told Global News from inside her car parked outside River Glen, where her mother is a resident. We can't do that, and I'm sorry, but there's not one logical explanation for it. Not here, not in this situation, she said. I scroll down. We can safely have residents go out, get some fresh air, enjoy the sunshine. That can be done with precautions. In some other situations, I'm hearing that people are still in lockdown in solitary confinement when we know that, of course, that itself causes harm. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? We must continue. We must continue to inflict this because of COVID. Keep pushing the button. Keep throwing the button to inflict the harm. Why? Why are we allowing them to do this? Why are we listening to them when they tell us to? Randy Hillier has an exchange between Michelle Rempel and somebody else asking if they can hug their grandmother or if they can hug their mother. And Hillier says, both the question and answer show the height of stupidity of our elected members. Hugging a person does not require permission. Let's get a grip. Let's get a grip, man. Yeah, you don't need permission. Decision in quarantine hotel injunction has been released. We look forward to the hearing on the merits, view our release and the decision here. This was not the result we wanted today. But the court did recognize that applicants in our challenge have sympathetic stories and the constitutional questions need to be heard on the merits. The court also acknowledged that the applicant's Section 7 charter liberty interests are engaged by the quarantine hotel policy. We look forward to the hearing on the full constitutional question, and we are proud of the work we're doing assisting these travelers who need to leave Canada for compassionate reasons. We will seek to expedite the hearing on the merits, and these travelers have urgent needs to go and be with their ailing loved ones outside of Canada. So this is challenged. It failed to, the injunction failed. They didn't see that, but they didn't agree with that. The judges didn't agree with that. But they're going to have a look at the constitutional questions, I suppose. So not great news. Not so good. Not so good. We continue the experiment for no good reason. Colorado has announced plans to lift its statewide mask mandate once the current mandate expires on April 4th. Yeah. So I wanted to update you on this situation. National Post is reporting. BC father arrested, held in jail for repeatedly violating court orders over child's gender transition therapy. He is alleged to have revealed information about his child's mental health, medical status, or treatments, and gave information that could reveal the family's identity. Here is just a quote from Malcolm X. And he says, "If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing." Right? Isn't that interesting? We've got a father with no right or say in how his minor child is medically intervened with. And these are lifelong decisions that if they waited until the child was an adult, that child may have a different outlook on things. But things are done that can not be undone. And that's unbelievable. And to frame... I'm not going to go further into this story. I've talked about this a lot. There's a lot going on with this case. But to frame it that way in the headline is just... And I mean, the people who write the headlines and the people who write the articles are different, usually, at this level of newspaper anyway. But to frame it that way just shows you what the media wants you to look at, wants you to believe, wants you to take away. And that's scary, right? When you're a father, when you are a parent, you want the best for your children. And having... gender transitions as part of the vernacular for people who are younger. Listen, if you're an adult, no problem. I don't care what you do. What you do is up to you, and it's your business. And if you find a doctor who's willing to do for you what your brain is telling you, I don't want to get in anybody's way. That's fine. Do what you want. But when there is a structure, a system in place where adults are responsible for their children until the age of majority, which is 18. And in some, is that always a hard and fast rule? No, I think there are certain situations where teenagers can maybe show some autonomy. There are situations where 16-year-olds are autonomous. But having worked with kids, I worked with teenagers too. And when you go back and work in a high school as an adult, like I worked in latency age, which is under 12, kids for a very long time, for 10 years. And then they decided to move me to a high school. I think they were messing with me, but high school kids are just the same. And I remember myself being a very reasonable teenager. I was smart and I had a job and I thought reasonable, worldly, and I knew some things and I could have conversations with adults and I thought I was pretty reasonable. But when you come back and you talk to a 15-year-old when you're 30, you realize that there are massive, massive blind spots that they just don't have any idea exist. And it doesn't make them stupid. It just makes them experience. It counts for a lot. That's the point I'm trying to make in a long-winded way. And the more experience you have gives you critical thinking skills to push back against the wisdom of the day. The wisdom of the day with regards to gender transition therapy, right? Shouldn't be targeted towards kids, and yet it is. It is big time in Canada, and it's very scary. And not having the legal ability to say, if they want to do that at 18, then they can do that at 18. But until they're 18, their body needs to mature, and I don't agree. Now, if a 14-year-old tells a therapist or a teacher that they feel kind of like transitioning, it is, well, here's the end result. And Jordan Peterson predicted this. He predicted this in 2015. And he created a firestorm for himself. Why? Because they didn't want people connecting the dots until it was too late to undo. Is it too late to undo? The legal framework is there. Speech is illegal, right? He can't talk about this. Unbelievable. He doesn't have a say, and he can't tell his story. Scary. Moving into China. Garneau warns the world doing business with China comes with risk of arbitrary arrests. Oh, how long have the two Michaels been in jail? Breaking news. It's a little late, right? I mean, okay. Yeah, thanks for the tip, Tips. Anybody who was watching got that a few years ago, but thanks for letting us know, Mr. Garneau. Stuff like this makes me think that maybe our government isn't quite serious. Politics briefing. Canada again denied request to attend trial as Michael Kovrig, excuse me. I feel like Joe Biden there. Faces a Chinese court, right? So Canada can't go in. Sorry about your luck. China's doing stuff. Canada hits Chinese officials with sanctions over gross human rights violations in Zhejiang. Or Zhejiang? Yeah. Right. Good timing. Right? This is yesterday at noon, right? And I mean, I wonder why they're not letting us in. Right? This is 20 hours ago, right? I mean, I'm not saying that China's right. I'm just saying the timing is just interesting. Canada is hitting 4 Chinese officials with one entity with sanctions in relation to what Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called gross and systemic human rights violations taking place in Zhejiang region. The sanctions, which Canada is applying in coordination with the United States and the United Kingdom, come amid multiple reports, studies, and news articles detailing the horrific mistreatment and abuse China's Uyghur population has been subject to in the Zhejiang region. I'm saying that wrong. Today, Canada and the European Union and the United Kingdom and the United States imposed sanctions in response to the repression of Uyghurs and other ethnic minorities in Zhejiang, Trudeau said in a Monday press conference. These measures reflect our grave concern with the gross and systemic human rights abuses taking place in the region. We will continue to work closely with our international partners to pursue accountability and transparency, says Trudeau. Take it with a grain of salt. I mean, it's been years we've had these issues with China, and it's been years that nothing has happened about it, right? Like nothing really meaningful. Sanctions, I guess, are interesting. It's interesting that the trials are happening for the 2 Michaels. I don't know what's going to be next. A 20-year sentence, and then that's that? 20 years of trying to get them free, or more or less? More drastic? Would there be is there even potential of a death sentence for either of them? I hope not, but I have no idea what China's doing. Scary stuff. Moving into more local stuff, the food scarcity, food farming is being impacted by COVID-19 restrictions. And this is Randy Hilliard sharing this. He says, first small businesses were shuttered, healthcare restricted, long-term care neglected, education starved, rights violated. Now our food supply is at risk because of public health policy. I'm glad to see our farmers are joining the resistance. Here's a letter from the Norfolk farmers, I believe. Norfolk's farming community is presently in a state of crisis, and immediate action is required by all levels of government if there is interest in saving the 2021 growing season. Our hands have been tied by our local Halmond Norfolk Board of Health Section 22 order as it pertains to the 3-man per bunkhouse quarantine regulations and the new federal government switch testing procedures. These 2 requirements together have made the worker quarantine unmanageable from both the growers and the Haldimand Norfolk Health Unit standpoint. The recent imposed letter of instruction pursuant to regulations enforced by Haldimand Norfolk Board of Health under the Reopening Ontario Act were sent to area producers in an email on Sunday evening, March 14th, 2021, and effective at 12:01 as of midnight, March 15th, 2021. Read the safe travel instructions. Okay, so they're saying it's unmanageable and expensive, and here's further to that. Farms with thousands of workers have to transport each one in a separate vehicle, only 3 to a bunk once settled. Bunkhouse. And add this to carbon tax, and man, is food about to get expensive. Healthy environment, healthy economy. Double speak for squeezing blood from a stone. This is today the Canadian government presented a climate plan, a healthy environment, and a healthy economy. From Environment and Climate Change Canada, which includes a steady increase in carbon price of an additional $15 per ton per year beginning in 2023, rising to $170 per ton in 2030. This is an accelerated increase to a tax that was already burdening the businesses that Canadians rely on for food. The current carbon tax schedule, once fully implemented in 2022, will cost Canadian farmers around $60 million per year for using natural gas and propane to dry their crops. The recent announcement could triple that cost. There was an exemption in the House of Commons passed recently to exempt farmers from the drying cost from the carbon tax. I guess they found a way to reapply that, so maybe we'll have to have another vote in the House of Commons. Maybe get rid of Trudeau. I feel like it's not going to happen. unless we all become enlightened and vote independent across the board, and Dominion. So sorry, probably not going to happen. Aaron O'Toole says, we will have a plan to address climate change. It will be comprehensive and it will be serious. Okay. But make no mistake, we can't have a green future without jobs and growth. It'll be the same as Scheer's climate plan. Dressed up a little bit different. Lipstick on the pig, a different tiara, right? But it's the same pig, man. Sorry about your luck. It's not happening, right? Here is this. Somebody's pushing back. A conservative convention delegate pushes back on media spin around climate change. She basically says that the climate change motion was already in there. Scheer inserted it a few years ago. I think it was Scheer anyway, talking about how climate change is real. But I said he straddled the middle, the center, and the conservative standpoint a little bit better. His whole thing was the environment is important. Hold on, I'll find the quote. It's in here. Yeah, this was in under Scheer, and I don't know at what point under Scheer. Maybe it was before him. Maybe Harper got this in. I'm not sure. But it says the Conservative Party believes the responsible exploration, development, conservation, and renewal of our environment are vital to our continued well-being as a nation and as individuals. So very riding the fence. You can take from that what you want, but it's certainly not climate change is real, and we're going to spend taxpayer money on it, which is basically what the new resolution. So what was voted down was a new resolution that strengthened the language around that. And the Conservatives wanted to keep it at what it was, basically. Environmentalist media outlet receives $355,000 from Trudeau government. Man, if I could apply for grants. I don't want to apply for grants. I'm fine. But it's just interesting how much money is being thrown around. I just wanted to highlight how much money is being thrown around by our government. And it doesn't seem like anybody wants to rein that in. They're like, you know what? We've got a $2 trillion debt, almost, $1.8 trillion. We've got hundreds of billions in deficit at the provincial level and at the federal level now. Why not spend more? Let's just spend more to create bullshit stories about the environment. The narwhal. It's some Redditor who was like, oh, I can make it about the environment. This is about Saijan. This is an incredulous conservative person on a committee. I think it's a committee. I don't think this is the full House of Commons, talking about how Saijan and Trudeau knew about Vance's indiscretions and gave him a raise anyway, and it's disgusting, blah, 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 blah. They're ignoring the story. It's not going to blow up. It's not going to bring the government down. It's not even as big as the Attorney General bit. Right? Like Saijan not investigating a Me Too moment. It's unfortunate that it's not. And there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of upset people with valid concerns and valid critiques. And is anything going to happen about it? The biggest thing that I think will happen is maybe Saijan steps down. But if Saijan steps down, that'll implicate Trudeau in some way. So I don't even think that's going to happen. They might... How are they going to deal with this in a way that's publicly acceptable? There's going to be some mea culpa. There'll be a placement. There'll be creation of an oversight committee or something like that. They've already speculated on creating a military oversight committee for this kind of stuff. But that's what the ombudsman's supposed to be. And then Saijan was supposed to initiate an investigation or confirm that the ombudsman was going to initiate an investigation, not approve a wage increase or a bonus, right? But again, what are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do? It's years on. We're in a whole other set of problems. Right? It's the tangled up Christmas wire again. It's the same problem. And nobody's got any incentive to untangle it. Nobody wants to. Aaron O'Toole says, I'm disgusted. This is hate speech. Attacks like this shouldn't happen anywhere. Jim Watson, Ottawa, and all Canadians should never be subject to hate. We are better than this. We are a country that stands up to each other, for each other. That's part of what makes Canada special. A statement from the mayor of Ottawa says, one of Jim Watson's neighbors noticed the expletive and homophobic slur Sunday morning and called the police. So Aaron O'Toole, the leader of the Conservative Party and trying to be next Prime Minister of Canada, is really rattled by graffiti on the Ottawa mayor's driveway or street in front of the Ottawa mayor's house. I think this is bullshit. This is exactly the same bullshit as Trudeau being upset about the hijab hoax attack, the scissor attack, or whatever the heck that was. Excuse me. And all of these people getting frustrated or upset. Cam Guthrie weighed in on this. Like, kumbaya, let's not have hate, right? Except against those white supremacist terrorists. You know who I'm talking about. Wink, right? Bullshit. Absolute garbage, these people. Should be ashamed. Is he gay? Is that the problem? Like, I don't even know if he's gay. I don't care if he's gay. I didn't care if Kathleen Wynne was gay. I don't care about any of that. I don't give a... Are you good at governing? Great. Do a good job. Represent the people who you are elected to represent. Do it well. But this is a distractive, divisive, garbage news story that has absolutely nothing to do with anything. Call the public works people, get it removed, and move on. Oh my goodness, the hate. What about the children? Right? Like, come on. Statement from the mayor's office says one of Jim Watson's neighbors. Oh, I already read that. Blah, blah, blah. Garbage bullshit. A Canadian women's group demanding removal of male inmates from women's prisons. I have a friend, a former friend. Apparently I didn't take COVID seriously enough, so we're not friends anymore. Fine, no problem. But that person worked in a women's prison. And I asked her probably a year and a half ago, I said, how many men in the prison? Like, how many inmates are men? And she said, I said, more than 5, less than 20? And she said, less than 10, probably. And I said, okay, interesting. Because we worked in different places together through the years, so we were good friends. And I thought that was wild. And it was an eventuality and a certainty that this would happen, that somebody would catch wind of this and say, this is not appropriate. Now, the prisons are trying to be ahead of the game on the woke curve, right? And so if you say you are in fact a female, but you present as a male, they'll move you into the women's prison. I don't know the details. I don't know if you get to be in Gen Pop or anything like that. I don't know if you have any kind of like living restrictions or anything like that. I mean, they're in prison after all. But isn't that weird? Isn't that an interesting thing? And now women's groups, they're saying, no, hold on a second. Women's prisons should be women's prisons. Isn't it interesting that men, acting as trans women, have redefined the term women for inclusivity's sake to exclude women and to allow a man to claim that they're a woman without having surgery? And I mean, okay, is a vagina the only thing that makes a woman a woman? What about all of the interior stuff that you don't see right outside? Breasts? Okay, breasts. Some women have larger breasts than other breasts, but like, how about all of the rest of that? Right? Like, it's a very interesting thing that in Canada these days, all you have to do is claim that you're a woman, and magically you can go to the women's prison. Magically, you can compete in women's sports. Right? Like, what do you have to go through in order to validate that? And how is a high-level athlete going through such a transition and also able to compete at such a level? It boggles the mind, doesn't it? Right? Goodness me. And I mean, if you identify as a woman, what is the justification for putting you in a women's prison when that could potentially infringe on some biological women who are traumatized by men who target them, right? And men who don't necessarily tell the truth in order to target them. It seems like the prison system is setting these women up to be targeted by men who've learned how to game a pretty easy system to game. What do you have to do to prove that you're a woman? Yeah, I'm a woman. See? I cross my legs. Hey, right? Is that it? That's all you have to do? Do they have better food in the women's prison? This made me howl. Okay, we're almost at the end. I know I'm long. How do I do 50 minutes a day now? This is crazy. I apologize. It's too long. I'm sorry. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to speak to the media. They're reporting this. Oh, he's going to speak to us, everyone. I wonder which color turban he's going to wear. Put the purple one up. He loves that one. He's going to speak to the media about what? Who cares? Jagmeet Singh will speak to the media. Stay tuned. I'll let you know if it's anything consequential. It's probably, we're going to support Trudeau. Bye. We'd really like pharmacare. Oh, Trudeau did that already? Okay, we'd really like something. We'll get back to you soon. I don't think Trudeau doing any of the NDP initiatives is a good idea. It's be wary of the champion, right? They'll take it and they'll switch it around on you. You'll pay double the cost for half the goods, and they'll tell you that it's free. Gadsad says, I've spent 2+ decades, 20 years, fighting against lunacy in all sorts of ecosystems, including from within environments that should have had my back. In most instances, I've received zero support from people who should be fully supportive. Today, I must admit that I feel disgusted and fed up. There are days, man. There are days where it feels like that. And then there are days where you have proof that the Wellington Dufferin Guelph Public Health lied to you. And And things are good. And things can be good because you can follow up. And you can say, hey, this associate professor at the University of Guelph also sent you a letter saying the same things. Some days it feels like you're the punching bag. And some days, you get to be the boxing gloves. Okay, today I'm going to be the boxing gloves. So thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. Check out CanadaReport.co. Check out SpeakingMoistly.co. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. Apparently I didn't get it in there yesterday. Have a wonderful, wonderful